fall over the past 18 months or so. How could you be persuaded that this is the right strategy?
The reality, certainly a year ago, when we looked at how oversupplied the market was becoming, was there were no quick fixes. High prices over 4 or 5 years had stimulated a lot of investment in US tight oil reserves, but elsewhere in expensive sources of oil. And all of that oil was coming into the market, and high prices were also slowing down demand growth. And if we look back to the 1980s, when Saudi Arabia did try and rebalance the market on its own by cutting its production, it ended up taking millions of barrels of production out of the market, but prices still ended up coming down. So I think you can understand for the countries that are struggling why they're frustrated by the low prices now. But looking at market fundamentals, the rebalancing only takes effect after a long enough period of low prices to really reduce the investment, to really reduce the levels of future supply. We'll start to see that next year, I think, but it will become increasingly prominent as we go through the rest of this decade.
Richard Mallinson from Energy Aspects. He calls himself an internet entrepreneur and freedom fighter, but US prosecutors call him a criminal and accuse him of copyright infringement, racketeering and money laundering, and of costing the US entertainment industry more than $500 billion. Well, today, the case of Kim.com took another twist. A court in New Zealand has ruled that .com, who's the founder of the now-defunct website Mega Upload, is eligible to be extradited to the US to face charges. During the hearing, the prosecutor, Christine Gordon, said Mr. .com and his colleagues had knowingly enabled website users to share pirated content.
They deliberately attracted copyright-infringing material to their websites, deliberately preserved it, deliberately took steps to profit from that material and paid vast sums of money.
But speaking outside the court, Kim.com vowed to fight on.
What I'd like to say is that this is not the last word on the matter. We have filed an appeal. I'm still on bail. And the whole process until where we are.
Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Kim Zeta, a senior staff writer for technology magazine Wired.
He considers himself an internet entrepreneur, a businessman. He realized a need for large storage, and he satisfied that need. By the way, that storage service was used not by just by copyright agencies, but by government agencies as well, and corporations for storage. But he amassed a lot of money. His business was extremely successful. And he didn't sit quietly like a businessman just enjoying his money and reinvesting it. He was quite flamboyant, and he appeared online in photos with his yachts and with a lot of girls and fast cars. And that attracted a lot of attention, obviously. That's part of what's cost him here.
You think that extravagance, that very public extravagance, has not done his defence any favour?
Well, I mean, not in terms of, it doesn't really have an effect on in terms of legal defence, although the government and the copyright holders, we're talking about the movie and music industry, maintain that he made dollars off their losses. They estimate that it cost them more than $500 million in losses of earnings for copyrighted material. So the flamboyance of that is essentially them saying, spending our money. Legally, you don't make a case over that. So really, the accusation is this is in large part driven by the music and industry, that they pressured the government to make this a criminal case rather than a civil case, and that's really
that they're scared of people like Kim.com.
Yes, the accusation is that the industry is frightened about a changing world in which they can no longer control the content that they distribute. And that frightens them, the millions that they can potentially lose when you have digital content that can be traded like this.
He describes himself as an internet freedom fighter. Do you think he's now losing that fight?
It's unclear. This is kind of an untested case that the government is bringing. In the past, we've had safe harbor provisions in the law that allow, for instance, a company like YouTube also to say it's not responsible for the content loaded on its site. What they'll have to show, and they may be able to show this, is communications with associates where they actually encourage people to upload copyright infringing material. If they reward them in that manner, they show sort of a willful knowledge of copyright infringing material on the site that they decide intentionally not to delete. They may have that. The court in New Zealand decided yesterday that the government has presented a legitimate case against Kim.com that would allow him to be extradited. But you can't extradite someone solely from New Zealand on copyright infringing. So the government has filed other charges, money racketeering as well, in addition to that. And so they've really built an aggressive case in order to get him out of New Zealand.
Kim Zetter there from Wired magazine. So what are the possible wider implications of this case? It's a question I put to the intellectual property expert Severin DeWitt.
It's not so much about rules, because there are enough international treaties and national rules on copyright infringement. The US government is trying to beat copyright infringement outside the United States. One, and secondly, is a sort of year-long cat and mouse game between copyright holders, filmmakers, the artists, and the like, and ingenious companies using internet in its many technical ways to hide copyright infringements. And big companies that are facing definitely will have copyright issues and intellectual property as a whole high on their list of major concerns.
Kim.com's lawyer, Ron Mansfield, said in the wake of that latest decision that if the US government gets its way, websites from YouTube to Facebook would need to police their internet more carefully. Do you think that's right? If so, what does that mean?
There is, of course, one thing that YouTube and Facebook certainly don't want to do is to police any content in a way that the US government would like to see them doing it. It's fairly impossible to get millions of files and the millions of materials being uploaded. And there has been a continuous battle between the service providers and the copyright owners and the government. Who is responsible for what? It's not just Kim.com. Copyright infringement is massive on YouTube and Facebook. Not only by big companies, but even small artists. Even somebody who has uploaded a video that went viral is copied multiple times. Well-known artists, well-known people on YouTube who get thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of visitors. Copy material from other sites. Facebook copy material from other Facebook, copy videos. And as videos becoming increasingly for Facebook, stealing from each other is a concern. But who's going to win ultimately? The law or the technology? You ask me, and I bet it will be technology and not the law.
Intellectual property expert DeWitt. Well, let's take a look at the markets now, and investors on Wall Street are waiting nervously for any sign of how retailers have fared this festive season. So far, the signs are promising. Ed McIntyre of 24/7 Wall Street told me a short while.
Traffic from retailers is mediocre. National Retail Federation said revenue would be up maybe 3% this year. The amount of competition between the bricks and mortar retailers just keep their heads above water has been vicious, and then you've had a lot of discounting, and interestingly enough, some of it is because of the weather. A lot of big retailers, particularly department stores, assumed that the weather was going to be cold here between October and now they're stuck with that. Like mad. Just to get it out the door so they don't have to hang on to it.
But that changes presumably when the weather changes.
Well, it's going to be 72 degrees here on Christmas Eve tomorrow, which will be an all-time record high in New York City for Christmas Eve. So I know that it will eventually get cold, but every day that it stays warm, anybody who bought inventory based on a coolish winter is going to have a problem.
Doug McIntyre there, 24/7 Wall Street. And let's take a brief look at the numbers on Wall Street. The Dow Jones up 1.1%, 17,602. The FTSE in London ended up 2.6% at 6,000. Oil in New York, $37.89. You listen to World Business Report for the BBC World Service. The Beatles there from 1963, Money, That's What I Want. And money's certainly what the Fab Four have earned since the band split in 1970. They're thought to be the world's biggest selling music act, shifting around 600 million records, CDs, and downloads over the decades. But one place you haven't been able to find is on streaming music sites. Until now, that is, because it's been announced that from tomorrow the Beatles music will finally appear on streaming music services, including Spotify, Apple Music and Google Play. So, why now? That's a question I put to James Hanley, senior staff writer at Music Week.
They feel they've maximised the value of the back catalogue. What is interesting to me is that just last month they reissued their one compilation. Obviously that could have hurt sales had it already been available on streaming. It's not the first time they've been late to the party on something like this. 5 years ago they debuted on downloads, having been off iTunes from the start. The year before that, they brought out the Beatles Rock Band game, which was a last way to maximise that catalogue.
You're saying basically that this is not from a position of strength, is it? This is from a position of weakness, that sales are falling.
Record sales are diminishing across the board, apart from vinyl, which is going strong and it's had a real revival. Unless you've got an absolute phenomenon such as Adele, record sales are not what they used to be. Whereas streaming is really on the up, and at last count, I believe streams were up 80% year on year.
Who made this decision then? I mean, who owns the Beatles back catalogue? Is this a decision that the remaining Beatles would have discussed?
It will be Apple Corps and Universal. I'd be very surprised if the remaining Beatles weren't involved in that decision.
What does it mean for the world of streaming then? Because if you have been interested in streaming music, if that's what you do, and you're interested in the Beatles has been a big blind spot. I've done this and I've kind of noticed very, very quickly that certain acts on there aren't on there, particularly the Beatles. Is this a significant milestone in the history of streaming services?
It has to be considered that, yeah. It's almost the final frontier for mainstream acceptance of streaming, I think. What is worth pointing out, if you look at the list of the top streamers at the moment, there's no kind of heritage act anywhere. It's all dominated by younger ones. I guess this will be for a lot of younger people under 25. There is still remarkable population that will never have heard them, or at least won't have heard them in any great depth.
Apart from presumably their parents going on about them endlessly. I mean, is this part of the issue then for the owners of the Beatles back catalogue, in that if they want to keep the brand alive, they need to appeal to younger people, and the way that younger people are listening to music now is they ain't buying CDs, lots of them aren't even buying downloads from iTunes, they're streaming. Is that part of the calculation here?
I would imagine so, and also I don't think they're listening to albums in the same way that people of previous generations do. That they seem more interested in tracks to the current generation, individual tracks, so they'll certainly have plenty to go at where the Beatles are concerned.
But that's sacrilege, isn't it? You can't listen to Beatles tracks individually, they're albums. They're formed albums.
You and I can buy this, but there's a whole generation growing up not with that same cultural album, that same education we had.
James Hadley there on Music Week. Well, collecting seaweed along Ireland's coastline has been going on for thousands of years. Worldwide, it's now becoming a much sought-after commodity. But in Ireland, it's largely been harvested by people for local use. For generations, they've done this for free. It's the old ways of Dermot Fleming reports from the Atlantic fringes of County
Blacksall Bay, a place of great natural beauty on the west coast of Ireland. It is much ravaged by emigration as it is by the wild Atlantic even here behind me. Many people rely on the sea for their living, not just from fishing, but also in collecting seaweed, which grows in abundance along the coast of this part of Ireland. Sides and pitchforks, the working hours dictated by tides and daylight. Communities all along the west coast of Ireland gather seaweed. Some use it as fertiliser, while others sell it to meet growing demand from the coast. It says that seaweed contains unique nutrients, helping sustain not just health, but a large hostile local economy too in this remote area. An emigration after years of tough austerity.
It's very important. Like the likes of myself, we're sending, I was sending away to factories. Other people was harvesters for fertiliser like those. It's fearsome what it's saying.
But locals here are forecasting trouble ahead with a new licensing regime planned by the Irish government to cover seaweed collection. The seaweed gatherers say they don't know what's planned, other than that they might have to pay for something that's been done for free for generations. As he packs away at the seaweed, Jimmy Geraghty is furious.
It's a disgrace. The people on the West Coast. That right is going to be taken away. Well, they could have it all, like people.
Seaweed resource from multinationals and the sale of a state-owned company which harvests seaweed industrially to a Canadian multinational, Acadian Sea Plants Limited, means that the community here are worried that they'll be cut out in any new licensing regime. I spoke to local politician Rose Conway Walsh of the Sinn Féin party.
Well, our concerns around that is that the licenses would be given off to multinational companies, and that you'd have a whole monopoly situation along the west coast of Ireland, whereby multinational companies would own the seaweed rights, and that would exclude local people from their rights to the foreshore and to the natural resources that are available in it.
The global seaweed industry is dominated by Japan and China and is currently estimated to be worth around $6 billion, with growing demand in Europe, which imports 75% of its needs. Anne Ruddy, who moved to West Mayo from where her family emigrated, has set up a business to develop seaweed cultivation and employment. She backs the idea of licensing, but wants it to drive sustainable local jobs.
The seaweed in this area is world class. Based on the pristine water, the lack of pollutants, it does make it a very valued commodity. My biggest concern is selling it is that Ireland tends to lose control.
The Irish state has awarded just 6 seaweed collection licences for the whole country. The legal condition for the new licensing regime is proving more complicated than may have been envisaged by the Irish government, which is examining legal advice over the issue. The Department of the Environment says that would improve a legal right, but while some have entitlements through property law, proving such a right will be difficult for those who, for decades, have gathered seaweed based on custom and tradition.
Dermot Fleming there, reporting from the Atlantic fringes of County Mayo in Ireland. Well, one buyer of seaweed is the cosmetics maker Lush. Walk down the high street of many of the world's big cities and you can usually smell their shops from quite a distance. Small but fast expanding, the company is also known for the campaign it runs on political issues. Lucy Hooker has been to Lush's headquarters in Dorset, England, to find out why the company devotes so much of its energy to political campaigns.
The shop where Lush first started 20 years ago, like all its stores, displays bright-coloured bar charts and psychedelic soap. Above all, there's that trademark, pungent, fruity floral smell. But Lush can get up people's noses in other ways too. Over the years, the company's founder and chief executive, Mark Constantine, has shocked passers-by with provocative campaigns against testing cosmetics on animals. He's raised money for gay activists in parts of the world where homosexuality is illegal, and currently objecting to the negotiations over the transatlantic trade and investment partnership. Why would a company put so much of its resources into selling messages alongside the soap? Hello, Mark. Tell me where we are now.
We're now in Pollard.
This is where you come up with the product.
This is the next.
Towering rooms, Rose Castle kitchens full of pots and pans, boxes of ingredients, clothes, vanilla pots, and there are lots of Lush employees working on new shapes, Lush has always been known for friendly or sustainable business against testing on animals. Well, what's made you want to make other issues part of this?
we've got this other situation where we're now making products, we're inventing products, we're manufacturing products, we're selling them, and we have a little left. So in part, we're giving that to charity. In addition, we will try to inform the public if we think something's happening.
One of the campaigns recently, though, was against teachers.
So what we're talking about there is an extremely large and boisterous agreement between major parts of the world that may not suit the individual.
And yet it's quite difficult to imagine a teenager or a young person coming to your shop to buy a bath bomb or some really interested in the dry politics of international trade.
At no point do I accept that anyone, whatever age, should not be clearly informed with the best
This summer, Lush was criticised for celebrating violence after it named one of its perfumes the Lavender Hill Mob after the riots of 2011. Though Mark Constantine says that it was really celebrating the way the community came together in the face of the violence. None of this seems to have done the brand any harm, though. Pulling away like
BBC Lucy Hill there reporting from the headquarters of Lush in England. And that's all. Podcast this programme always on the BBC News page on Facebook. And you'll also listen again at bbcworldservice.com/WVR, and business news constantly updated throughout the day on the BBC website. But for now, thanks for listening.
Through the story of our lives. Soul Music listens to some of those stories. Then plays the music that accompanies them.
Soul Music at bbcworldservice.com.
Zniszczono twoją wieżę.
This is the BBC World Service, bringing news from around the world to a global audience.
Let's join our North American correspondent, David Willis, who is...
Mark Lowen is in Turkey on the border.
Laura Trevelyan, live. Our correspondent in Sydney, John Donnison.
Online, on mobile and on air. This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station. Hello, this is the BBC World Service. Over the next hour, we're going to bring you a draft. It was first broadcast earlier this year. The anniversary of Michael Keaton. The agreement sees sections of it which began to establish the limits of the power. But seen rather charts the fight for rights and freedoms in the 20th. Recorded and edited in the documentary style.
This is BBC News. The military is close to defeating the said this was driven out from Adamawa and Border states and remained a force only in its heartland for no reason. Mr. Buhari said the militants could no longer mount significant But Boko Haram is reported to have made more than 100 attacks and killed more than 1,000 people over the past 2 months. A small detachment of Afghan government forces has been
It seems the only part of Sangin not now controlled by the Taliban is a military base about 7 kilometres from Sangin town. Nearly 300 police and soldiers are taking refuge there after the police headquarters and district administration building fell to the militants. Those under siege are surrounded and say their many wounded need urgent evacuation. The governor of Sangin has been airlifted out to Helmand's main military base, along with injured soldiers and some who have already died.
Iraqi forces are continuing their offensive to try to get out of the center of Ramadi. France has been fighters are thought to be still in the town. So now the thousands of civilians. Former Russian Khodorkovsky has told the BBC that a Russian court's decision to issue an arrest warrant against him was politically motivated. Mr. Khodorkovsky, who now lives in exile, has accused President Putin of again moving against him because of his support for opposition movements. Sarah Rainsford is in Moscow.
He's already been stripped of his oil firm and served 10 years for tax evasion. Now he's being pursued for his alleged role in the murder of a regional mayor in the 1990s. But speaking to the BBC in London, Mikhail Khodorkovsky claimed the latest move was ordered by President Putin himself because he sees him as a threat. The one-time oil tycoon has been funding pro-democracy activists and opposition candidates here for some time now. Revolutions are unpredictable, he told the BBC, but when that happens, he vowed that he won't stay on the sidelines.
World News from the BBC. 2 Israelis have died after a knife attack by Palestinian city in Jerusalem. One died after being shot accidentally by police who stopped the attack. The second died of stab wounds in hospital. Both the Palestinian assailants were shot dead by police. It's the latest in a series of such attacks in the past 3 months. Israel and the Palestinian territories particularly tense as tourists come to celebrate Christmas. The UN Security Council has unanimously backed last week's agreement between rival factions in Libya to form a government of national unity. It's divided between 2 competing administrations. The powers that both feel over the unity government will bring stability and help to fight the Islamic State group in the country. Over 3,000 prisoners in the US state of Washington have been released early because of a computer glitch. The bug miscalculated the sentence reductions they were entitled to for good behavior. Officials are trying to locate the ex-offenders and say many of them may have to return to jail. Christmas lights in American households use up more electricity during the holiday season than some small countries in an entire year, according to researchers from the Center for Global Development. More power than is used annually by Ethiopia, Tanzania or El Salvador. Laura Bicker has the story.
The study says that America burns 6.63 billion kilowatt hours over the Christmas season, shining brightly coloured lights in trees, across rooftops and gardens. That's enough power to run 14 million refrigerators, but it's still only a tiny fraction of what the US uses in a year. Compare that to El Salvador. Its annual electricity consumption is 105 billion kilowatt hours. The researchers say they're not anti-Christmas, and the lights, they say, are a beautiful thing, but they do want to show the difference in energy use between rich and poor countries.
BBC News.
You're listening to the BBC World Service and now our drama, The Great Charter. We now return to our main stories on Sunday the 7th of June, 2025. Richest and most national
together the I-5, the world's largest data corporations, and the G20 to create a single global organisation, the G25. Rory Catherine-Jones, BBC World Service, Friday.
Good morning, and welcome to all our delegates from around the world to this summit. As you know, we have a single agenda to decide whether or not to create the G25. To put forward that proposal, the CEO of Epsilon, the world's largest carbon corporation, and president of the I5, Johan Koenig.
Since the beginning of the new millennium, just 24 years ago, our very sense of identity, of who we are, has changed. Now, we have not citizens, but netizens, members of a global. Collectively, the I5 generates and mediates economic activity measured in trillions of dollars.
As the negotiations get underway, I'm seeing reports from our news drones of protesters gathering in force outside the secure zone. Now, this kind of demonstration has become an inevitable feature of any high-level global gathering in recent years. The corporate and governmental super...
Sojusznik pokonany. Dwa grupy drużynie przeciwnej.
Jet. I have a problem. All our streets been down.
Which is why with a globalized economy,
Fahad Al-Mansour, you would like to respond?
This is something around which we must be entirely clear.
Koniec
Nation states on one level and then members of the I5?
No, Epsilon and the others. Members. At Epsilon, billions of subscribers participate on equal terms and within a clearly defined framework of rights and responsibilities.
Mr. Koenig makes an attack on the legitimacy of my company.
I'm sure that's at this point, in the spirit of we are going to hear by video link a contribution from the
Przeciwnik pokonany. Przeciwnik został seryjnym zabójcą.
Yes, I can. Of course, in developing countries, all those issues of legitimacy are addressed. The priority has to be increasing access to and participation.
Right, we have a problem. We need to move this noise. Can we get people on the case, please? Yes. No, that's a definite. Systems malfunction. No. I'll call you back.
Your clearance, please, madam.
Here.
Thank you, Miss Mallet. And now the residence manual, please.
That's not necessary. It's headed to one-stage secret.
Very sorry, Miss Mallet, but alert status is unrelated to black special. I need you to complete the two-stage biometric. Seems to be in order. Oh, Miss Mallet, you've got your clearance. delocalized.
Welcome to our world. A basic hack that lets you look into some important systems where you can see what's happening.
Basic? So why isn't it fixed?